YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back, and today I'm going through every NFL team and grading them based on their 2022 offseason so far. So still some free agency, still the draft. We always can come back after that and see how teams improved or decline with their grades. In a way, this is also a winners and losers video because I didn't grade with letters. I graded, you'll see my grading scale on every single slide of this video, but basically graded them by big winners down to big losers. You'll see the scale. So a lot goes into this, not just free agency, but the offseason as well. Maybe a lengthy video here to explain where I came up with my grade for each team and what they've done, what I've liked, what I've disliked here. So really excited about this one. A lot of offseason content on the channel, a lot of letter grades for signings and trades. Draft season's right about now, so we're getting into that content. Really excited about that. Cannot wait for the draft. It's my favorite day of the year. So it will be live during day one as well. So hopefully you join us, like, subscribe, turn notifications on, follow our Twitter, constantly talk with you guys there, a lot of updates and more. Here's our Twitter. Was talking about this video that was coming up here, so always got updates, rumors, news, more. Start with the AFC East team. Start with the Patriots. And you see my grading scale there. You're going to see this on every slide. It goes from big, at the bottom it's big losers, then losers, slight winners, winners, and big winners. I put the Patriots under losers. I'd say the avoided overspending. Like, that could be a positive or a negative there. Last year they went crazy, so this year they kind of, was the plan to go crazy last year and they knew they weren't going to go big this year? Did they kind of regret what they did last year? They're a little thin on cap, a little bit. There was some rumors about them going big for, going for big-time receivers, big-time linebackers, maybe. A little underwhelming, a lot underwhelming in those categories. Roster kind of feels worse. You lost some offensive linemen there, obviously. Shaq Mason, they traded him next to nothing. I'm not really too worried about them replacing them, but that doesn't go into the grade because they got to go out and do it for me to change the grade, obviously. That'll play a part for all these teams. All these teams probably got plans for the draft. Will get better from the draft. Every team will, but I can't really predict those things with that. We can always come back, though. But, yeah, so pretty underwhelming. The roster does feel a little worse. That's not ideal when you have a second-year quarterback in there who looked, Mac Jones, who looked phenomenal last year. So it, they're not big losers because I agree with not going and spending crazy money when it's, you can't really do it, I guess. I do like the Trent Brown. That's the thing, though. That Trent Brown situation, I love the way they handled that. They kind of let him test the market. That really brought his value down because nobody's going to value him besides the Patriots, and they got him for a real cheap deal. I'm excited about Jabril Peppers with the Patriots. I think he fits that defense. He's got some upside, but just definitely a little underwhelming because the roster feels like it got worse, and just we expected a little bigger with, maybe receiver at least, and they did not. They didn't go there. They didn't go there. So I consider Patriots losers here, not big losers though. The Jets, I went with winners, so the second best grade possible. I like what the Jets are doing. They brought in that staff last year. And it's a staff that understands not only the game, but they understand what a good team looks like, what good football looks like. So they went out and got some good fits, some good players, improved the roster in several ways there with several additions. Laken Tomlinson, I love that fit with some of his ex-coaches there, and they needed to improve that interior. Maybe other than that, there's no wow, crazy. I mean, I like there's definitely signings I like. Uzomah, Whitehead, Conklin might be underrated. I mean, they did good, but they still have some needs out there. I know I seen on Twitter, I talk with a lot of people on Twitter. I see people's comments on my tweets or just in Twitter in general. And there are some people that, there are, maybe some Jets fans that kind of wanted more big-time signings, like more Laken Tomlinson signings. So I guess there's nothing massive out there besides Tomlinson, wow, that's a big winner. But I like what they're doing. They're kind of steadily making this a winning team, possibly. It's not like they're staying put, relying on development. It's also not like they're going all in and destroying their future. So I really like what the Jets are doing. I'm excited about the draft for them because they have some good draft capital. So I would expect them after that point, if they do it right, wait and see. Definitely could be confident, but I expect them to be in that big winners category after that. So, but still some needs, still some business to take care of. The Bills, I also got in the winners column here. improve the team. You had Von Miller. It's a big one there because they need somebody that just gets after the quarterback. Roger Saffold, Crowder, Howard. Those are not as big as Von Miller. Those aren't major, I guess, but got better there. That's what I like, too. There's a ton of teams in the Bills situation, and, a lot of those teams like, hey, we can't really do much. The Bills kind of found a way, Those are really good football teams, smart football teams, just find ways to win, find ways to get better, to find ways to win, So I like that. Von Miller signing does come with some risk, obviously, but you got to take risks there to try to be that championship team. Other than Von Miller is nothing that, because they did pay him. It wasn't like a steal of a deal, but I do like the addition. They're winners for that. And other than that, I like the settled deal, but there's nothing like wow. So splitting hairs here when it comes to winners and big winners. I wasn't just throwing out the big winners, but Bills might have the best roster in football. I didn't really expect to be talking about them as winners. I kind of just expected them to, hey, we don't have a lot of space. We got a really good roster. Let's stay the same. So I expected them to kind of be in the slight losers or slight winners column, and then they're sitting here getting better. So you got to respect that. So they are winners for sure. And the Dolphins, the first big winners. I got 4 of them on this video. If I'm not mistaken, I got 4 of them. Not too many given out. And I gave one to the Dolphins here. I really like what they did. They had a lot of cap space, so they had to have a big offseason. They really went big here. They get maybe the top free agent of free agency in Teron Armstead. They've been searching for, I keep saying they've been searching for left tackle, but they've been searching for offensive line help in general, and you get a proven Pro Bowl left tackle that really fits that team under a pretty good contract as well. You had Tyreek Hill. We didn't think that was going to be possible for anybody to add Tyreek Hill. Just adding that speed, that valuable of a player. They did give up some draft picks, but man, they are creating a football team here, and they already had a defense in place. Connor Williams, underrated signing. He was starting to get better. They needed anything there, and they get Armstead and Williams. And, hey, they added some running backs that I think we all, are not big-time running backs in Edmonds and Mostert, but good fits, some upside, solid backs. So you like that. They go and put Tua in the best possible position to have success, So can't wait to see how that works. There's really no more excuses here, and he's in position he's in position to have a pretty good year, so we'll see if he does it. But it's kind of another positive here in a way that they kind of made this team either complete or a QB away. So let's say if Tua doesn't really work out, they're a QB away, which nobody loves being in that position, but you created a pretty damn appealing spot. I mean, Miami always feels like, because it's Miami, kind of feels like an appealing landing spot. But you created a damn appealing landing spot here. And this wouldn't really matter if we're talking 5 years ago, 10 years ago, in that range, because there's never really any big-time quarterback free agents. And the guys that were traded, the teams chose where they went to. It's a different era. These quarterbacks being traded, they are picking. It's wild. They are picking where they're turning in the NBA. Don't really love it, but they are picking where they're going. So that's that's why that actually matters. So I don't really see any negatives here. They spent a lot of space. I don't see why they shouldn't. They had a top tier defense last year. Needed some offensive line. You needed to help Tua progress. You needed some receivers. I mean, you did everything. So these are big-time winners. Miami Dolphins might be a scary team. It's all on Tua Tagovailoa. I'm excited to see what he's got for us. And now we go to the NFC East. We got our first big losers, unfortunately. Really was debating with myself in my head. Big losers or losers here for Washington. But yeah, first trading for Wentz, was that even, no matter the value that you gave up, the compensation that you gave up, was that the winning choice? Was it the right choice? And no, I think I know Washington fans weren't happy about that either. It wasn't the grade A, not even close choice. And then you gave up a bit too much for him at the same time. And then on top of that, they ended up doing it too early. Now, it sounds like they were pretty confident they were out on Watson, whether he was out on them or it doesn't even matter. They were out on him. So we'll take that away. But other quarterbacks became available, Matt Ryan being one. And again, going back to just panicking, doing a little too early and spending a little too much on Wentz. So you're kind of But then technically, so you're kind of in the loser category, maybe big loser. But then technically, they improved at quarterback, right? You know, so maybe loser category. But then, you know, look at Wentz. You know, you expect this big free agency from Washington, had loads of cap space, and Wentz just pretty much limited the whole thing. I mean, there's some other signings that they added. Norwell, they did lose some offensive linemen, though, at the same time, and we'll kind of get into that. They added some guys, like I said, but it really limited. Wentz was pretty much their offseason. Limited free agency, limited cap space, potentially limited cap space in the future. Right now, it looks that way. We'll see what happens. And then I start to think, like, where I'm still kind of in that, do I make them losers? Do I make them big losers? Did they actually improve? Because they moved on from defensive lineman Tim Settle. They surprisingly released Ioannidis, and they have a plan there. They thought that was the right choice. We can trust them. You can be confident. But at the end of the day, they moved on from them. They still got words, losing Settle a little bit less. And I still like their D-line, don't get me wrong. But definitely less talented depth, fact, on that defensive line. And then they moved on from Flowers. They lost Scherf. I know he's been injured, but he's a potential Pro Bowl guard with them. So it's like, they might have got a little bit better at quarterback, but they got a quarterback that can cost some games, and they lost some guys here and there. Didn't really make much additions in free agency. I'm starting to think, and I still like their roster. It's an underrated roster, I'll say. I still think that defense we expect to be maybe number one last year. Was not that. It was underwhelming. I think it can get back there, so don't get me wrong here, but it kind of feels like they, in terms of the roster, they might have got a little bit worse. So very, very important for them to have a good draft. Very important. Some talk about them doing homework on quarterbacks. If they take a quarterback in this class that early, nightmare situation to be trading up for one. But if they do any of that, it's just a little contradicting, So it's a team that could definitely make the playoffs here. Again, I like their roster. I think it's underrated, but I think they slightly made it worse. And combining all of that with the other negatives, I kind of had to consider them a big loser there. For the Giants, one with slight losers. Yeah, it's a tricky one because Giants going, we knew what was about to happen here. I don't think anyone was expecting them to make big major signings. They're tight on cap. And they talked about, and they have a very expensive draft class. So for some reason, people forget that draft classes cost money. It's a cap that costs against the cap. People forget that for some reason. I got to remind people. But so you kind of went in expecting, little moves, gotta dig themselves out of hole, gotta clear all the space. So it's tough. It was kind of one of those teams where I kind of wanted to put in the middle of slight losers, slight winners, because this was almost expected. There's some under the radar signings that they added, especially to the offensive line. Nothing major, obviously, there. Tyrod Taylor was all right. So everything was kind of expected. What kind of made me decide, because I wanted to make a middle grade, slight losers, slight winners, but middle grade would have been nothing. I don't think that really made any sense for a winners losers video. So what made me decide slight losers over slight winners is, it's hard to call them winners when they didn't really add much big time, and they kept preaching we're going to have a quiet free agency because we got to clear all this space, and I trust that they'll figure it out, but they still have some work to do out there. They still have some work to clear that space to do. So as we sit at this halfway point of the offseason, again, we can circle back to this after the draft, perhaps. We rank all the drafts, so we do all that. But for those reasons, I put them at slight losers. It's nothing to, panic about or anything like that. Not too many big losers given out, but the Cowboys were one of them. A little confusing here. Lost key players. You look at Amari Cooper. They thought they had Randy Gregory, and what they gave Amari Cooper up for, nothing. They thought they had Randy Gregory. They lost him, and he really picked it up last year. La'el Collins, they got nothing in return for him, which that's a pretty good right tackle. Connor Williams, who may be underwhelming in the playoff game, but other than that, you see he's kind of progressing. It's not a crazy major loss, so you start to lose some of these players. And kind of going back to La'el Collins, something I have noticed, there are some Cowboys fans that like Terrence Steele. I know the Cowboys like Terrence Steele. I kind of go back to, because I see a lot of comments, I see a lot of people talking, during the year, whether it's on YouTube, Twitter, and anytime Dak did something kind of questionable, which Dak had a phenomenal year, it seemed like the blame was, Terrence Steele's in there. Like, that was the scapegoat. That was the blame. And now I see it's like, he's better than La'el Collins. I don't know if it's different people, if we're split down the middle on Terrence Steele's thoughts on him, but it is a little weird that I'm seeing that. So during the year, there was not too much hype on him. Now that Collins is out and he is the guy, now it's a little different. So I thought that was interesting. It could be kind of a split in the fan base maybe there. I really can't say for sure. But yeah, so maybe the positive out of that, like, can you find a positive out of moving on from losing all of those players? they didn't really gain anything value in draft picks, but can we dig deep, find a positive? Yeah, they cleared some money. But if you're going to clear that money, you better damn sure do something with it, right? They haven't really done that. I think their plan backfired on them, and we still got some big free agents left, and they've been drafting very well. I've loved Jerry Jones' draft recently, so we still got the draft, obviously, to up this grade here, dig themselves out of this. But I think their plan backfired, and they kind of cleared that space. They were okay moving on from those guys so they can touch up different spots, spend money on different spots, and then get Randy Gregory back and pay him big money, and that backfired on them. So I think the money that they cleared, they did some things they didn't really want to do. You don't want to have to get rid of Amari Cooper. You don't want to have to get rid of Leo Collins, but they kind of did what they felt like they had to do because to spend the money on Randy Gregory and some other spots, and they've kind of missed on that. They've kind of missed, so that they cleared that money for as we sit for not absolutely nothing, but kind of close to nothing. One of my favorite sleeper under the radar pickups, though, which isn't going to change your grade big time here at all, is James Washington. I think James Washington's a heck of a receiver. I think he's very underrated, so I like that addition. But there are some just major negatives here. You made the roster worse, where you were a playoff team for sure. When you got in the playoffs, it just wasn't enough. You didn't feel like a legit playoff team. You needed to get better, and they cleared space in some other spots, got worse in some spots to get better in other spots and bring guys back, and they missed out on that. So it's a pretty obvious big losers because that's tough. That's tough. Eagles, a little tricky one. I went with slight losers here. I'll say this, though. I know the Eagles fan base is one of those fan bases I've noticed where, in the offseason, just seeing comments where, they think they're going to get this, we're going to get this big guy, because it's a big fan base. It's a big time organization here. They're going to get all these big free agents. So I think those fans probably would grade this worse than me, unless they change their mind, because they expected to get a lot more, But being more realistic, they had limited future cap, so they couldn't use future cap, very limited. They had a decent amount of cap space this year, but you got to remember, the draft classes cost money. It takes off cap, people forget that, and they have 3 first-round picks, so they were kind of limited in their spending. So again, those people that thought that they were going to get all these big-time players, they're probably thinking they're big losers right now, but kind of being more realistic that they were a little limited in spending. What I don't hate, but what I don't love, Hassan Reddick was kind of their big signing. I think it's a little bit of a risky one. It's a surprising one to me. I talked about in the past, kind of a boom or bust because he's very productive. He's been feasting off high blitzing schemes, right? And then feasting off those moments into blitzing. Eagles second to last in blitzing last year. Now this could mean, yes, that they're trying to blitz more, which is good. They're trying to fit kind of a Reddick type defense here, but you got to go out and do it. You got to go out and add those players, and you got to go from second to last in blitzing and really climb. So it's kind of a wait and see there. I like Reddick. I'm not thrilled about the fit. Kind of a wait and see, but I'm not really thrilled with that was their one big signing. And again, a lot of people probably expecting to have a load of big signings. I kind of expected maybe 2. They had 1, and it wasn't really expecting to be that. I thought there would be more attention on the big need positions, linebacker, receiver. They had Kaiser White, but kind of had those types of players. Receiver, linebacker, and somebody's going to say, well, they have the draft. They're going to do that in the draft, and I think so too. We got to go out and do it. You got to go out and do it, and then we can bump the grade up, right? So little tough one here with the Eagles, but I know some fans expected a lot more, so they got to be a little disappointed. Got to be realistic about it, though. So, and then the Ravens, a weird one as well. I'm going to go slight losers on this one. I like this is a unique one. The Ravens. I like the defensive approach. They move on from Don Martindale, their defensive coordinator, who's known as a good defensive coordinator, but they understand what's happening. We blitz a lot, we play a lot of man coverage, and the teams that we have been in a fight with, the teams that we're trying to get, we're trying to pass up, the Chiefs, the Bills, now the Bengals, what they did the Ravens last year, and we'll talk about the Ravens' health. That was a big reason why they struggled last year, obviously, but so man coverage seemed to not work the blitz, the man coverage seemed to not work against those teams. So they would have to adjust to what they're not used to when they play those teams, which is more zone, less blitz, which they're really not built for. And their defense corner, that's not his scheme. So moving on from Martindale, even though it was surprising he's a good defense corner, I like the approach. I like where their heads are at. They're being smarter, but they actually need the additions to make that work. Now they add Marcus Williams. It's a big impact sign. It's a coverage safety, which they haven't had. So that's a big one right there. But that's just one, right? You need other additions. You got to value the actual edge rush, actual pass rush rather than the blitz. You probably need linebackers to fit a little more zone if you're looking to do that. Because they kind of got the guys that are just good for blitzing. And then they have a couple free agents on the defensive line. They did add Michael Pierce, but a couple free agents on the defensive line. So they have to go out, and they had that's a loss too. They had Zadarius Smith. They lost him probably because they lowballed him. They probably should have upped that price a little more because you needed that pass rusher, that just gets after the quarterback, and he's a guy that also creates for the team. And that kind of goes in the next part. They kind of, when I say getting healthier but also have more needs is kind of in that first part. I like the direction they're heading, but they kind of created more needs and they have to execute that, which they can still. We got time, but if they do that, then we bump the grade up, right? But this second line that I wrote here is interesting because I kind of was thinking some of the other teams I talked about, their roster feels worse. They improved their roster. Where's the Ravens at? It's a trick question because they're right now, going into the next season, they're a ton healthier than next year. So technically, it's going to feel like the roster's better, but you're looking at say that roster was full healthy last year, full healthy this year, they have more needs out there. So you could argue that it's worse, but again, they're going to get healthier, so they should be a better team in general. So I want them to go out and execute a little more. Little tight with the cap. They have some spending money. They were a little hesitant with Zadarius Smith. They're a little hesitant with a lot of these guys. Just one addition right now. So they were interested in Bobby Wagner. We'll see if that happens. But yeah, I'm going to go slight losers for those reasons I explained. At the same time, I kind of like the philosophy. I like the approach. I like where they're going to, but they have to do it. They have to do it. And I can trust this team. I think they'll get there, but I can't change my grade for each team that I trust and don't trust, right? They have to go out and do it. This will probably be a highly debated one, but the Browns, another big winner for me. It's a much improved team. It feels like they got major additions with Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper. This team with a great roster, it felt like they were a QB and receiver away. They went and got Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper, and they're still probably going to do some more work here, but we'll see. They have to go out and do that. But besides that, they're already big winners for me. Trading for Watson obviously comes with some risk here. So there's some people that say the Browns are losers. They'll grade them low because Watson, maybe they don't like Watson. They think he's going to be suspended for X amount of time. I'm not the off the field guy. All right. And I understand he could be in some trouble and he could be suspended. Even if he's suspended for 4 games, 6 games, I'm thinking long term here. Teams make it look like it's impossible to come across to get that type of quarterback. The Browns have a great roster. They're heading in the right direction, and they added that type of quarterback. That's the way I look at it. So if I end up wrong here, it'd be because Watson end up blowing up more off the field. He end up being out longer term, and I'll take that. I'll take being wrong on the off-the-field stuff. I'm upset with myself if I'm wrong on, if Watson sucks somehow, he's really bad at football, all of a sudden I'd be maybe disappointed in myself. I was wrong about the football stuff, so that's the way I'm looking at it. I think this is one of the best rosters in football. I think they're a championship type team if they're on the field, not suspended, good to go, whether it's this year, next year, the year after, a long-term process here. Not really. It's a long-term outlook, I should say, because they'll be good for a long time. Better wording there. Will they actually win a championship? That's the next question, but that's really not for this video. So they went out and found a way to get better. They got a really good team. They weren't afraid to go there. I, in a way, respect that. So it'll be debated. Some people will disagree for different reasons, but I think the Browns are big winners there. Steelers, another unique one here, because it's like with their moves this offseason, it's like they're halfway. They got 1 foot in the win now pool, if that makes any sense, and 1 foot in the retool mode. It's a little strange. It's strange. It was unexpected, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It almost sounds like it's a bad thing. It doesn't mean that. Some teams go one extreme or the other. Some teams go hey, we'll go rebuild. Do the Steelers really want to go full rebuild stage one? No. And some teams will be like, panic. Let's go spend all of our money. Let's make these big trades and try to win now, when the Steelers probably weren't going to, if they did that, they probably weren't going to win a Super Bowl right now because their quarterback offensive line situation, right? So actually a pretty good thing sitting in the middle there, but they're kind of in the same way with their signings too, like some great signings. I think the James Daniels signing was very good. There's a Keller Witherspoon, it's something major. I like the deal for him. Then some questionable ones. Okafor, bringing him back on that deal. I guess you needed to bring him back, but a little more expensive than I thought. I'm not a big Trubisky guy. It's some people will call it low risk, but if you play him, it's a lot of incentives. I think he's proven what he's got. So I thought there was a questionable one. Miles Jack's kind of in the middle. That's kind of a big player. Struggled recently. Didn't really feel like he fit the 3-4. So maybe some risk with that one. Does he fit? Does he, is he talented? Can he play like he did when he first came in, when he was in a 4-3 then? So, that one's kind of in the middle. It's kind of a impact one, perhaps, obviously. And they still have some needs. They had a lot of cap space now and a lot of cap space in the future. So I thought they would go a little bigger. I thought they would go maybe a big-time offensive line. Maybe they tried to. We haven't heard too much about that. They maybe maybe go for a big-time quarterback as well. We'll see what they do in the draft as well. So it's kind of on both sides here with the Steelers. There's some that I like, some that I don't. But I do like that they didn't go in either extreme, like I said, like stage one rebuild, which we didn't expect, or we're going all out for the Super Bowl when they shouldn't. I thought they might do that, so I guess that's a good thing there. So we'll go slight winners with the Steelers. Still more work to do. Bengals are next. I went with winners for the Bengals. Made much-needed improvements to the O-line. So technically, it's weird. A team improved. Yeah, technically it does because the offensive line improved, but they really just improved one unit there. But yeah, adding La'el Collins and Alex Kappa, pretty big. I think the Collins deal was a steal. Yeah, maybe a little, and that's where, something I gathered when I was making predictions too. There was like a herd of Bengals fans that were very upset with me. I gave them La'el Collins. I was predicting them to trade for him, land him somehow. And then I had Lake and Tomlinson, which they ended up with Kappa, and I had Bozeman. They ended up with Karras. And that was kind of my prediction when looking over the top tier. And I had a herd of Bengals fans that were very upset with that. They wanted bigger players and more players. So I'm going to guess that those group of fans, it's not all the fans, would grade the Bengals as a loser because they basically did the same range of what where I predicted them, and they lost Uzomah too, got Hayden Hurst. So yeah, unless those fans change their mind, which would be quite biased of them. But I would think that, and I was talking about this on Twitter not too long, I would think that most fans are very happy and they think they're winners as well because they improved the offensive line. So, but they kind of did in the range where I thought they would. I do think Lake and Tomlinson maybe a little bit step up for Kappa. And then Karras it's definitely an upgrade, but he's kind of been in and out as a starter, not really because of him, just somebody's kind of been better at times. So they got new pieces of the offensive line. Let's see if it actually improves. Let's see it, and I think it would. I would hope so. Let's see it in action here. So, yeah, a little hesitant with the spending, little bit, which isn't a bad thing, but unlike last year they went all out, and it brought them great success. This year, they were a little hesitant. Like I said, maybe I think La'el Collins, for the most part, is kind of a top-tier type free agent. Just got to stay healthy. But maybe, a little hesitant with paying Uzomah, which they have some space. So that was something. Maybe you wish they would have got a better center. Could have spent a little bit more. I like Kappa. I like the fit. I think, the top-tier guys, maybe just a little bit ahead of him. You spend a little bit more money. But I do like the Kappa fit there. So overall, they did what they had to do. They had to come in there, improve the offensive line, and I thought they did that. They got some good additions. Other than that, there's not too much going out there, so that's kind of what splits up the big winners from the winners. So I definitely thought they were a firm winner there, which is a great outing for a team that was just in the Super Bowl and going to continue to get better because what they added and because how young they are with their talent as well. Joe Burrow, Chase, etc. Lions are another one of those teams where I kind of wanted to create a stupid which wouldn't have made any sense. I was talking about with somebody else too. In between slight losers and slight winners, like what would I put there? It would be neither, which then, then make a whole lot of sense. Another one of those where I kind of noticed comments and, heading into free agency, a lot of Lions fans expected them to do all this big, to get this big free agent, that big free agent. And I didn't think that was realistic, but those people that thought that probably would consider the Lions losers. But I was a little more realistic here. Again, bringing it up again, people forget that the draft class costs space, obviously, and the Lions have 2 first-round picks, including the 2nd overall pick. It's pretty damn expensive, so I realized that they couldn't really go crazy with their spending. I thought they would maybe make a big, maybe one big move. I think DJ Chark was kind of only a 1-year deal, so it's hard to call that a massive move for sure. But I like it. I like DJ Chark. They needed an outside lengthy receiver like that. They had that. And there was really, was there a point to spending big? Because yes, you want to improve this year. But there wasn't like we have to spend big. There wasn't a reason to do that. You don't have like a quarterback you're trying to progress to build around. You don't have. You're not going to win a Super Bowl right now. So, again, I think it makes sense. It's hard to call them anything more than slight winners because there's nothing here that says winners or big winner. But it was kind of like they kind of did it right. It kind of made sense. They had to save for the draft. Maybe expected one more big move. But, again, based on people's comments and, the people that thought they were going to go crazy, get all these elite free agents, those people probably think they're losers. I think got to be a little more realistic in that. The Bears, one with slight losers is an interesting one as well because I guess the good thing about the Bears, what somewhat good thing about what the Bears are doing is they kind of are deciding that, hey, we're going to go in rebuild mode, and it's the right choice because going out and spending crazy money to try to force themselves to win now would have been a bad choice because that team just wouldn't have been able to get there. So it was kind of the smart choice of doing that, even though people aren't happy with it. Maybe they don't want to see them in that, a losing season, but it was kind of the right choice. So I'm kind of got them in that slight winners because, you can't really call somebody a big winner for doing that. Just doing the right thing there and, not making big moves. So I'm kind of in that range at that point. But something I don't like is, because you got this high upside quarterback in Justin Fields, and you need him to progress. You need him to get better. He needs to take care of the ball a little better. He showed flashes, but, he needs to be better. And you look at today's era, it's different. Like all these star quarterbacks, these young quarterbacks, they're getting the second year, the third year at the latest, they're really taking off, and that helps their confidence, that helps their progression, helps the team. The team gets more appealing spot, the team gets better. So you really need these guys to get going pretty earlier in their career in today's game, and they really needed some more offensive linemen and better. They added some receivers, but these are just depth receivers. They needed better receivers to help him progress because I believe in Fields, but if you kind of give him what you're giving him right now, that might hurt a little bit. So that's what kind of weighed it down a bit into the slight losers column. Again, right choice with the rebuild, right choice not going crazy spending, but you could spend. Like, don't be afraid to spend and help Justin Fields and make him better, and there's some signings in there. Al-Quadin Muhammad, I like that's a defensive signing. I like that one, but there's some other minor signings that are all right. I just expected maybe a little, you got to get a major signing in there too. It doesn't mean, you're not hurting your future doing that. So it's not like you have to do one extreme or the other, Another thing now that I'm thinking about it, they seem pretty picky when it comes to the offensive linemen. They want the specific athletic types. I'd be cautious with being too picky because then you end up with the offensive line you have right now, right? And I don't really agree with the guards. I'm just going to go out and get the best guards. I understand if you want the quick-footed, athletic tackles. I understand that. The league's kind of heading that way, so you can be a little picky about the tackles. But I'm a little worried that they could be looking for too specific of fits. That could cost teams sometimes. So, the more I'm talking, the more I'm not liking it. But we'll keep it at the slight losers there. Still some time to build around. No first-round pick, though. But you got 2 seconds. Hopefully they focus on, you can't just pick beforehand what you're going to take. But hopefully they get better around Fields there. To the Vikings, I'm going to go slight winners, slightly improve the roster. It does feel like it's a little bit better, mainly Zadarius Smith. I mean, that pass rush duo is going to be pretty damn nasty if it's healthy. That's kind of the question. But the Zadarius Smith contract, we broke that down in a video. That's one of my favorite contract layouts of the offseason. So they get better. They got Patrick Peterson back yesterday on a very cheap deal as well. So they're getting better. It's not like some of the other teams we talked about where it's like, yes, they're better. It's definitely not that. I think what's going on with the Packers, we'll talk about the Packers and the coaching staff the Vikings brought in. I think they're in better position to contend. Before it was like, yeah, it's pretty much the Packers division. Now it's like, it might be still, but it's, the Vikings see that. And they bring in a staff that wants to win now. So I do like, because there was some people thinking of the idea, will they go in the kind of maybe not, nobody was talking about stage 1 rebuild, but kind of in that direction. And then I think kind of the right choice staying win now, looking at the division, having that staff that's kind of ready to win now, and then some talented players in the Vikings. So I kind of agree with staying in the win now because, what's going on around you. They did kind of hurt their future a little bit, not as bad as a lot of teams killed their future. So not quite as bad, but they did a little bit. So they're kind of, they're kind of in that, they're in that win now mode, which kind of makes sense for the reasons I just explained right before that. But does it backfire? It's kind of a wait and see thing. Does it kind of backfire on them if they're not really a win now team? So that's kind of the question. So I went slight winners for the Vikings there. Packers, I went losers. Pretty similar to the Cowboys. We talked about the Cowboys. Very similar, actually. We talked about the Cowboys, but I gave the Cowboys a grade of big losers. So because there is a slight difference that bumps the Packers up here. But just like the Cowboys we talked about very early in this video, they lost some key players. The roster definitely feels worse. I mean, you have that opening at right tackle. I mean, Devontae Adams is gone. You lost Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Zadarius Smith is gone. And, so those are some key players there, obviously. And you got some more opening, trade some needs. So the roster does feel worse. And just like the Cowboys, find a positive in that. Find a positive. And there is a big positive that's at the end we'll get to. But one positive is they cleared space, right? That's a positive. But to do what? I think they thought they were going to use that space. Like they thought they were going to get Valdes-Scantling back. They were trying. They're in on some other receivers. They're in on some other players as well we heard about. And now they're kind of sitting there with that space. So what did you clear that space for? So that's the questionable part. Still some work to do. Still work can be done. Again, like I keep saying, we could circle back. We're not going to predict the future with this. But the difference between the Cowboys and the Packers, while the Cowboys are big losers, the Packers are losers, even though they're almost the same offseason, they added quality draft picks. And I do like the Jaron Reed edition, but with the Cowboys, I like the James Washington edition. But they added quality draft picks. Some teams kind of just getting rid of players, dumping them for nothing or for close to nothing with draft picks. Packers got some quality draft picks. They got 2 first-round picks now, 2 second-round picks total. So looking forward to see if they can do some damage with that. So it's a wait and see. They must hammer the draft. That's kind of what it is there. So it does feel like they're a little worse though. Maybe open things up for a team like the Vikings. It could be more of a battle, unlike the last few years. The Colts, an interesting one as well. Unique one. I went slight winners. Based on their free agency alone, it looks like they're losers or big losers because they had space. They didn't really want to spend it. They're a little hesitant to get better when it comes to the free agency. It really felt like this year was finally the year they were going to go out and do that. They didn't really do that. So it kind of feels like they're in the losers or big losers column when it comes to free agency. But they went out in the trade market and obviously trade for Matt Ryan, and that's kind of debatable. Was that actually a good idea with his cap hits and his age? Overall, it's a positive thing in my opinion. It's not like this, yes, wow, like huge, but they improved at quarterback. They didn't have to trade much there, so they got better there, and they got better with the adding Ngakoue, and they didn't have to trade much for that. So I put them in that slight winners column. It's kind of one extreme to another. The free agency, they're kind of in the big losers column. I don't like how they're hesitant to get better there, but when the trade market, getting better at quarterback, getting better at the pass rush position, which was 2 big needs of improvement, they're kind of in the maybe more than slight winners, but they do have some other needs. Like you kind of you get better at quarterback, get better at pass rusher. I do worry about going from Eberflus to Gus Bradley scheme. I do worry about a step down in terms of the defensive play. But you add Ngakoue, but you need corners. You need kind of the guys that fit that different scheme. You still need that left tackle as well. So we'll see what they do. I have that first round pick, so we'll see what they do in that category for all those reasons. We're kind of back and forth, but I consider them a slight winner. The Titans Titans are pretty similar, I'd say, somewhat similar to the Bills, where we didn't really expect much of anything from the team because of limited cap space, and that was really going to be okay because it wasn't expected, but they actually went out and made some big moves there, so that's why they're considered winners. They just found ways to improve. Kind of expect them to stay the same, and that was going to be not okay when it comes to contending, but okay because they had a legitimate excuse. But they found ways. Robert Woods was a steal of a trade for sure, and I like the fit there. Obviously, I like him with A.J. Brown. And Austin Hooper was a great pickup. It was the Titans desperately needed a tight end. Adding a quality tight end that can block and catch was going to help the Titans offense, actually, I think, by a decent amount. And then they were fortunate that Hooper got released, and they went and signed him for, I think, of a steal of a contract as well. So adding Woods and Hooper was pretty big there. But they still have somewhat of a question at quarterback, somewhat, because Tannehill's he's considered a good quarterback. He just can't get over that hump in the playoffs, I suppose. But there were some people out there expecting them kind of get better. Maybe that was a little unrealistic thinking. But, given the Titans able to find ways to get better, I consider them a winner. Jags, tough one, debatable one, controversial for sure. I went and said the Jags were a winner here, actually. They did overspend on some guys. They did overspend. I'm a big value guy. I grade things off of value. They did overspend a little bit, but having, we know they improved the roster, whether they overspent or not. So that's a positive. They overspent. That's on some, not everything. That's a bit of a negative. But having a guy like Trevor Lawrence, some consider him the best quarterback prospect of maybe all time, for some time, we'll say. He's got to be better. You got to get better around him because. Again, we talked about with other situations where quarterbacks are kind of decided or very, very earlier in their career. You see the Mahomes, the Josh Allen, the Lamar Jackson, the Justin Herbert, the Joe Burrow. There's more I can list. That's not the point of this video, but they're determined what they are early on, and they're making their teams a winner or a loser early on. So it's very important that Trevor Lawrence progresses now, and they assisted in that. They got him to help. You want to make him as good as he possibly can be now, so then it kind of creates a winning confidence. It creates winning atmosphere. It creates a more appealing spot at the same time. So they did do that, and that's the big positive here. I like the Darius Williams signing. I think people are too focused on the overspending signings. Darius Williams, a great contract. I like Aluokun, the linebacker they add. I think it's an incredible fit what they're trying to do with their defense. He's actually been improving big time, so he still has upside as well. And Christian Kirk was an overpay. I do really like the fit, though. They need that speed slot receiver to pair with Lawrence. So I do, even though they overspent, I like the fit, and I don't think we could take away the kids probably. When I talk about the kid, I talk about Christian Kirk and Trevor Lawrence. They're probably going to get better together, We can't really take that away from them. Zay Jones one was a little confusing, not overly expensive, but they kind of had those types of receivers already. Just go big or go home with that type of category. So I didn't love that one. Offensive line seems better, right? And they have that first overall pick. So overall, if I just sit there and think of, all the positives and negatives, I come out with them actually end up being a winner, which some people disagree. That's fine because, they did overspend on some guys, but we'll see how it works out. I think it was just so damn important to make Lawrence as good as he can be right now because how quarterback, it's crazy how the league's changed. Like, it used to be, let's wait till the quarterback's in his 30s and see what he's got. It's not that at all right now. Making the quarterback as good as he can be in his second and third year is massive. So I think the Jags went out and tried to do it. We'll see it in action. We got to see it in action, right? The Texans went with slight losers. We talked about I've been comparing teams in this video because some teams have some similar routes. I would compare the Texans to the Bears. who I graded a slight loser as well. Now, you may say the Texans have that positive of adding draft picks and more draft capital, so should they be better? And at first glance, yes. But the thing that's a little different, that's different from the Bears, but a little different from the Bears just decided to go in that stage one of rebuild. So they're making those kind of random one-year signings that the Texans did last year. The problem is Texans decided to go in that last year. They're doing it again this year. They're not putting the second year around. They're not putting themselves in position. It's like they're kind of tanking again a little bit, not putting Davis Mills in the best situation. And then Lovie Smith, they hire him. And I'm all for just get the best coach you possibly can get. That's me, but I think they're going to take some bashing, not by me, but at the end of this year, because they didn't put maybe Lovie Smith in the best position to win, and they may go a different direction. So that might not look too good, but we'll wait and see. No major additions again. I wish they were, and they shouldn't go all out and make these major signings left and right. Definitely not, but I wish they were a little more into it of getting better, and they will with the draft, and we can circle back because I expect them to bump up their grade for sure, having 2 top-tier picks or 1 top-tier, another good pick from the Browns, obviously, and some other draft picks they've added. So they'll eventually head in the right direction. NFC South, interesting team here, the Saints, and I'm going to consider the Saints a big loser, and They could have got a grade. This is an interesting one. They could have got a grade of in the winner category for me very, very easily, and I'll explain why. So we know the Saints were in a very bad cap space situation, and that's just, we can grade them. That's different. Like grade them in the past, why they're in that situation. That has really nothing to do with this. What ends up playing a part, I guess, because their money situation. But anyways, let me give you a scenario. We'll give you a scenario on what they maybe should have done to get a winner grade and then what they actually did. So the scenario to get a winner grade for me was, okay, they started in, it's reality. They started in the negative 85 million range or 80 range of cap space. So they had to I don't like restructuring, but they had to do it. You have to get to zero positive. It's a rule. So they had to do it. They had to. And when you restructure, you borrow money from the future, right? Some people think it disappears. It doesn't disappear. Anybody can restructure. It's just who has to, who wants to, who doesn't want to. But all right, so do what you have to do. Restructure those contracts. Do what you got to do. Get to positive. Get to just enough space to add the Marcus May, which I love the signing, to add to Jameis Winston, which I think it's a good signing to add. What they added, right? Just enough space to add that. Don't go over the top. Don't kill your future any more than you had to. Go into the draft, nail the draft, and just go with it, right? That, if they would have done that, doing what they had to do, I would have probably called them a slight winner. It's hard to call somebody a winner when you do have to do, maybe a winner. Because I like the Marcus May sign. I like some of these signings. But they didn't do that. I think their plan really backfired on them because they were structured up to positive, like the rules. Then they went over the top. They have one of the most cap spaces right now in the NFL for this year because they did more. They took more money from the future. Why? Again, the plan backfired. I think they thought they were getting some guys. I think they thought they were going to spend most of that. They got to save some for the draft, obviously. But they were in on I won't count Marcus Williams. I think they had negotiations with him before free agency. I think they knew they were about to lose him, and they lost him fairly early to the Ravens, so we won't count that. But guys sitting around, and they start to restructure more and more. They're in on Watson. I think they still want Teron Armstead back. We keep hearing they're in on this receiver, this big-time safety. Keep hearing that, obviously. A lot of receivers. Marquez Valdes-Scantling was one of them. Checking out the trade market. So they cleared all that space to get their guys back, like Winston, some of these guys, and then maybe get some more guys back or add this big-time free agent, and they missed. There's still some free agency left, so this can change, but they missed on all of those right now. Some rumors they can get Tyrann Mathieu, so that can help. So I think a little bit on the bad planning side where they borrowed too much money from the future, expected to do more. They missed out on Watson, which, what are you going to do? He chose the Browns. It ended up being a money thing. The Saints really just couldn't do it. You end up choosing the Browns. So what are you going to do there? But you missed out on Teron Armstead, Marcus Williams. You missed out on guys you're trying to sign. So you combine that thing, all those, they have to be a big loser. They have to be. But again, if they would have if they would have just cleared enough to do some of these signings they did. Again, I like the Marcus May one a lot. I think he's an underrated player, some upside. I think he'll fit the Saints. Then they could have been a winner, So just a little bit on the bad planning side. We'll see what they got left for us here in free agency. They can really up their grade up still. The Buccaneers end up being winners. The negative was they did lose some key players. We expected them to lose a load of key players. Brady came back. That definitely helps out. They're a winner because of that. They actually added and re-signed, more than we thought with the key players. You add Russell Gage, you add Logan Ryan, you add Shaq Mason, the steal of a trade. You're able to bring back Fournette, Godwin on an incredible deal, Carlton Davis on some of these contracts incredible, Jensen on an incredible contract, so those were good. I think the Russell Gage one's underrated. I think that might be a more impact signing than people realize. So I'm gonna go winners. Can't go big winners because you did still lose some players, still some questions about the offense line. Not really questioning the defensive line, but they could add some more players because it's always good there. So I went the Bucks, pretty straightforward with the winners. Another unique one, very unique one in the Carolina Panthers, which I end up considering losers here. So first off, you have no major additions. They missed out on a few guys. It felt like, they were in on Deshaun Watson. They were in on. So in a way, somewhat similar to the Saints here, somewhat. They didn't start in a terrible cap space situation. That's the difference there. They were in on Watson. Missed out on some big time. They were in on some big time linemen, and they could be in on Dwayne Brown still. Maybe they land Dwayne Brown, then we can change this slightly, or depending on what they do. So missed out on some players. What's the problem with that? Because they restructured a lot of deals. They used future cap and put themselves in somewhat of a hole, not as bad as the Saints, but for next year in cap space. And you do that to spend it now. You do that because you planned on doing something. They have the league's most cap space right now, around 31 million. You took money from next year, not because you just felt like it, because you wanted to spend. What are they going to do with all that money right now? I think they had bad planning. I think they thought they were going to spend a lot of that. I don't know on what it was. They shouldn't have been that confident they were getting Deshaun Watson. I don't know if they thought they were getting a bunch of these offensive linemen. I'm not sure. And there's still free agency left. They still got to spend on the draft. But $31 million in cap space, like, what are you doing with all that? So it's a little, looks, again, very, very similar to Saints. Bad planning. Doesn't look too great. But why aren't they big losers like the Saints? Well, they aren't in as bad of a situation. They didn't put themselves in as bad of a situation. They didn't miss out on as many guys. And they actually have some pretty good signs. That's why it's a weird one. They have some, it's weird because if we're looking at free agency only, if you're looking at free agency signings only, I'd grade them pretty high. No major additions. That's the problem. But they improved the interior offensive line. I like the Corbett signing a lot. I like the Bozeman signing a lot. Dante Jackson re-signing, and that was a good. I think it was a pretty good signing. There's some under-the-radar ones that we're talking linebacker, Higgins at receiver, Ioannidis at defensive line. So if you're just looking at that, there's some good contracts out, and they might have improved in some spots, but borrowing that much future space to not really use it is a big miss, and that's why that has more weight in this grading scale than some of the good signings they had. So this is a really tricky one, as you can see. But there's a lot of stock into that. What the hell are they doing right now? Are they bad planning? Are they missing too much? So that's why they're kind of in that loser column. Falcons, I'll go slight loser, mainly because this first part they kind of put off. You got some teams that had bad planning by restructuring and clearing the space to then miss out on using. The Falcons were they just put everything off because of the Watson pursuit, and that kind of affected them. It definitely affected their free agency. Felt like they didn't really know what they were doing because they're like, Matt Ryan, we're going to restructure. That means we're going to keep. That means we're going to try to win now. But then in pursuit of Watson, delayed, put them in a delay, end up moving on from Matt Ryan for kind of low value. So a little all over the place, bad planning in a different way from the other teams. So that's not great. That kind of puts them in maybe the losers, maybe big losers even, kind of close. It's not that bad, but the losers column. Rebuild was probably the right choice. I think that's probably debatable because they could have won some games now, but probably the right choice. And they got some solid deals. Mariota, I think it's a solid deal, good addition for now. Cordero Patterson was a steal of a re-signing. I like some small under-the-radar signings like Lorenzo Carter. He had Casey Hayward. So I guess that kind of brings them back to the slight losers column. Rebuild was probably the right choice. So maybe there's more positives, negatives, but there's kind of a big negative one where it kind of affected everything. And I don't think this was their grade A plan going into it. So that's kind of, and I'm confident on that. So that's kind of a problem. Another big winner, not too many of them. I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos here on a big winner. So that's 3 out of 4. There's one more coming. Then we still have some more winners, which is always kind of good too. But much improved team. You had Russell Wilson, obviously. You had Randy Gregory. You had a guy like DJ Jones, and you had a guy like Billy Turner, who maybe isn't major, and some other offensive linemen for camp battles and very good offensive line depth. But my favorite part of this was what they focused on. What positions, what units they focused on, understanding how to turn around a team, understanding your situation. And their situation was, hey, we won some games last year. We put up a pretty good fight. We got a pretty good roster. That's why we need to upgrade in the most important spots, the spots that get you to the playoffs, the spot that can do more than get you to the playoffs. And that's quarterback play. That's protecting the quarterback. That's pass rush. And people forget this sometimes, stopping the run, because you cannot win championship football if you cannot stop the run. The simplest way to beat somebody if they can't stop the run is just run the ball. Win the time possession. And what did the Broncos did? Quarterback, they had Russell Wilson. They added offensive line, like I said, Turner at right tackle, and they got some competition. They got really good depth now as well. Compton, some other guys in there. They got pass rush with Gregory. And that one's a little bit of we'll wait and see how Gregory is outside of Dallas, but they had pass rush, and they had a big-time run stuffer. He doesn't do much else than stop the run, but he's very good at stopping the run in DJ Jones. So they hammered the most important spots of a team, I guess, and that's kind of what they needed there. So that alone, that part alone kind of made me want to make a big winner because that's big. Rush trade does come with some risk if we had a nitpick here. I'm predicting he's going to be fine after that injury. He's going to kind of go back to playing. I guess we can't say he's going to be playing the best he's ever played in his life. Maybe that it's possible, but I'm going to say he's going to stay healthy. He's going to go back to playing somewhat like Russ. That's my prediction. Why is that my prediction? No, it's kind of wishful thinking. I think it's accurate, though. I think it's an accurate prediction. I kind of just hope it's that. So, again, there are some, because if we remember, he got injured last year. I think he came back to throwing too early, and he didn't play Russell Wilson ball. So, I guess it comes with some risk. We have to leave. There's an open window that is a possibility. I'm not counting on it. A lot of us aren't counting on it. It's probably a little bit wishful thinking because we all wish them. Well, maybe Broncos rivals aren't wishing them the best, but I wish everyone the best here. So, but I love what the Broncos did there. They got a lot better. And then their last big winners, and we still have some winners coming up, though. The Raiders. The Raiders, big winners for me. Much improved team. They add Devonta Adams, and then pairing him with Derek Carr and just having that big-time receiver is just huge. And they had Chandler Jones, a big-time pass rusher. They switched schemes, adding Patrick Graham, who I think is a phenomenal defensive coordinator, and they add some guys to fit that. So those, for all of the above, what I just said, it's pretty damn huge. It's pretty damn big. They improved for sure. The second part, kind of like the Broncos, this one part made them big winners. The second part kind of makes them big winners. You think a team that adds Devonta Adams, and they paid him how much? You add Chandler Jones, you pay him this amount of money. You got better here, there. They got to be out of cap space, right, for the future. I know they're a little low right now. They got to be out for the future. They're actually not. They still got a good amount, and they got to extend Carr, but that's not going to drain all of it. They're actually looking pretty damn good for the future, so they're taking it. That kind of goes into the next part. They still have some key needs. A key for Patrick Graham's, because, again, I think he's a very good defensive coordinator. I think it's an upgrade for them. The key for him, his defense, I think, does start with the interior defensive line. Look at the Giants. And the Raiders do not have that interior defensive line. They have the pass rush better than the Giants had, but they don't have that interior. They had some pieces that fit. They still got to focus on that. I think people want them to focus on maybe corner a little more, offensive line. So they still have some key needs, but they got time and they got space. They got time and space. They're going to be a very good team as it is, I think. Tough division. But hey, maybe they'll win the Super Bowl this year. Most people's prediction. You got the cap space next year, the year after too. Let's finish up. Let's get that interior defense line. Let's get retool up that offensive line into here and there. Let's get this big-time corner that we don't have yet. They can do that. So the negative is they still have some key needs, so they're not the most complete team. I think, I think the Broncos comparison might be probably more complete. But the Raiders could end up being the better team still, very well. Most complete doesn't necessarily mean better team on the field. So I'm not making a prediction there. I'm just saying it could go either way there. But they still have that, shockingly still have that space to continue to get better in the future. Because I love that part of it, because usually teams that make these types of moves kind of in a hole, and they're not. Next up, the Chargers, who I also think they're winners. Maybe borderline big winners, but they're got a nitpick here when they're coming to giving out the big winners. There is something, but this is a team that it's wishful thinking, but I'm predicting, and we're not going to predict with grades. That's why I didn't give them the big winners yet, but I'm expecting them to be a big winner after the draft, and we'll get into why. They definitely improved their roster, which needed to be done, because when you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert, you can do some special things. You need to be in the playoffs, unlike last year. They're very close. Major additions with potential star cornerback J.C. Jackson and potential star pass rusher Khalil Mack. It's just big-time additions. So they definitely got better. Maybe what's just holding them back from the big winners is I do wish there was more focus on, because what was the biggest problems with the Chargers last year? Number one, the run stopping was atrocious. You cannot win big games. You cannot win championship football if you cannot stop the run, right? Easiest way for somebody to beat you if you can't stop the run, and they know it, That's one. And then another major problem was Justin Herbert's supporting cast led the league in drops, 38. Now, they didn't really focus on that, and that's where I said I expect them to be big winners after the draft. They have to go and execute and do it, though. I can't just say, oh, they'll do it. It's not fair. Can't do that for certain teams, right? Or even every team. I expect them to go handle business in the draft, and then they can be big winners, and handle those positions. But kind of circling back here, first glance, they added some defensive linemen. And Khalil Mack helps stop the run, but he's good at stopping the run as an edge rusher. That's not going to make you stop the run better. He's a pass rusher. He's just better than average stopping the run as a pass rusher, So keep that in mind. But first glance, they added Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson. They got better stopping the run, right? First glance, yeah, but then you start to think about it. I think you kind of put a Band-Aid over it, SJD was a little underwhelming with the Rams. He's an upside guy. He's an upside guy. So does that help you stop the run right away? And he was playing with Aaron Donald. Usually we've seen kind of a theme that guys look better when they're with Aaron Donald than without, but he's still got upside. So I'm glad to see them work with them, perhaps get better. Austin Johnson, is he actually better than Linval Joseph? I start to think about. So I don't know if that, I'd say, is their run defense better? My money would be on slightly. It's slightly better. I would definitely say, if I had to say it's better or it's worse, when I put my money on, I think it's better. How much better, though? I think it's kind of just a Band-Aid for now, right? So they got to kind of go out and finish that, and they lost White as a linebacker, still need linebackers. Don't think they'll value them that highly, though, right? And then they kind of stayed the same until they added Everett as a target. I like it. I like it. I want a little more consistent receiver out there, though, which Keenan Allen was Mr. Consistent. Last year, some very uncharacteristic drops. So I think that can change. Wishful thinking, but that's my prediction. Mike Williams, kind of big-time contested catch guy, sometimes will disappear a little bit, some red zone drops. So I do want a more consistent catcher for Justin Herbert, because you got this elite core. I'm a huge Justin Herbert guy. I think this guy can win multiple MVPs very soon. So you just want him to be as best as you can possibly be. So finish what you started here. Finish what you started, and I think they'll be a big winner here. So that's an interesting one there. Chiefs, very interesting one. Huge loss in Tyreek Hill. I mean, it's a valuable player. And then Matthew, it sounds like he's gone. I'm trying to see if he signed while I was talking, because that tends to happen. It didn't happen. But, it's probably gone, so it kind of looks like, roster's getting worse there. I do wish the big problem was not being able to get pressure on the quarterback, so I wish there was more focus on that. And they cleared some space to do that, so at this point where they're kind of looking like losers to big losers category, But they had some pretty good signings there. I like Juju. I think he's very good. It would be very good in a high-powered passing offense, and here you go. Maybe the most high-powered in football. I think he's a dominant big slot receiver, and the Chiefs been missing that. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, some people would say they overpaid him a little bit. They add that receiver. They're missing Hill, but the problem was they didn't have enough receivers. It was pretty much Hill, and then Hardman was okay. Now it's Juju, Valdes-Scantling, and Hartman, so you get an extra receiver in there. They still got the draft. They also added quality draft picks, so overall, they're a loser because it does feel like they got worse and they didn't focus on the edge position and they kind of cleared money to do what exactly. But then they had some good players, some good signings there. If you just look at the signings and nothing else, pretty solid. And they added draft picks on top of it. So I think it's somewhat similar to the Panthers, except they didn't kind of create this. It's actually not that similar, but went with slight losers there. 49ers end up being losers here. They needed to do more. We knew that. They kept coming up just short. Whether it's Super Bowl, just short of the Super Bowl, they come up just short. Need to do more to get and win that. Get to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, right? And they didn't really do that. The Garoppolo plan really backfired on them. And the plan was when they drafted Trey Lance, we're going to keep Garoppolo for one more season, and then we're going to move on from him next year, go with Lance, and we're going to free that $25.55 million in Garoppolo, and we're going to be able to do some damage when we're already a pretty good team. That was the plan. It's a pretty good plan. What they forgot was that Garoppolo does have some injury concern. The injury just blew up everything. It blew up everything, and it does sound like that the 49ers weren't willing to be lowballed on a trade when they needed there was going to be a win to even take a 7th-round pick at some point, especially because he was injured. So right away when free agency started, they needed to stop bluffing, playing hardball. They needed to trade him, clear the 25.55, so they can make this signing, that signing, that signing, this signing, because they are Super Bowl or bust. They need to be in that mode. They can win right now. And also a big piece is Trey Lance, going to be a first-year starting. You want him to be as good as possibly can be. You want to keep that confidence up. You want that confidence to start high. So I think they could have used more around him. You lost some linemen here and there, and they could have used it because Debo is kind of a hybrid player. You could have used another receiver. They don't have a first-round draft. The more I'm talking, the more should I have put him as a big loser, actually. The more I'm talking. I'm thinking of more stuff now. Sometimes that'll happen as I'm on here talking. They did make some moves, though. I mean, they brought in Ward, which is a slight overpay, but they got better at corner, which was a problem last year. Brought Hyder back. They did make some moves here. And I guess the Garoppolo injury is not their fault. They were limited because of that, so it's not 100% you blew it, A little bit. They blew it a little bit. It sounds like they could have traded him for next to nothing and just didn't want to do that. And I think they should have done that. I really do. So plan kind of backfired, kind of borderline losers, big losers there. The Cardinals are next, slight losers, no major additions, limited from tight caps, so this is kind of expected. But if you look at the future, they actually have some future space. Now, it's not for everybody. I'm not saying teams, if they have future space, you should use it now. You should borrow it now. I'm not saying you have to. But the Cardinals were, beginning of the year, they were content. It felt like they were a legit contender. End of the year, it's like, and even the playoffs, they're like, was this team even a playoff team? So you want to get better. You want to get over the hump. You want to be more than just a playoff team, so you want to go to work. So you think this is a team that should be using that future cap space. It's 100% debatable. And then a big addition like J.J. Watt last year, kind of just a 2-year window though, and they're not operating under like a 1 more year window. So that's a negative too, I guess. But accepting that. Maybe J.J. Watt won't be part of this. At least they're accepting that, what we're growing here. So it's hard to put them in a slight winners category because they could have done a little bit more to get better. They didn't really get better. Lost some guys, obviously Chandler Jones, but they were limited for a reason. I guess it's not the worst thing though. Like saying that, hey, we're not a Super Bowl win now. We're getting close. We're not a Super Bowl now team. You can actually argue positive or negative there. I could actually make the case for positive. But, yeah, I think they could have done a little bit more here, and it feels like they got a little worse. Some sneaky additions, though. Jeff Gladney, who was just drafted in the first round a couple years ago. It still feels like a first-round prospect in a position of need there. Just as long as he's okay off the field. And then Will Hernandez hasn't really worked out, but I like to see him in a different system here. I think that could end up being a sneaky addition. So nothing major with the sneaky additions there. I thought those were a little sneaky. That's really what it was. The Seahawks, and some people rip into Seahawks based on what they did this year. So this is probably a highly controversial, highly debated one. I went slight winners though. Missed out on some key additions though. That's kind of the negative. I felt like they were in on some offensive linemen, perhaps. Were they in on Deshaun Watson? I felt like they took themselves out of it, but I also heard that Watson took himself out of that, so who knows? That's kind of the negative. They missed out on some key additions. I think the rebuild is definitely the right choice. There's such a thing as too much confidence, and I thought actually the Seahawks would be too confident. I thought they would be like, all right, Russell Wilson back. We're gonna go win the damn Super Bowl, right? We're a win now team, and they could have made the playoffs. They weren't getting by the first round of the playoffs. They did. They were not getting by the second round, if they forced the win now mode. So in Russell Wilson, what you get from now versus what you get from if you kept them for another year or two, totally different. You might have lost your opportunity. So I thought it was the right choice. People disagree because you trade away a star quarterback. But you had some quality picks. I think they got a pretty good haul. They got some good players with it too. I think Noah Fant, is a pretty solid player. Still has some upside. I like to fit with their offense. It's a little different offense. I get Wilson out of there. In the rebuild and pulling the trigger on that was the right choice. I respect them for not being too confident because that's a bad drug in the NFL. It really is. It's really bad for teams, and it kills them in the future. When you line up to win the Super Bowl and you were too confident, you kill your future. And some teams are feeling that right now. They're really feeling it. So I think it was the right choice. They made some under the radar additions. I think people expected maybe a little bit more, but you go in rebuild mode. You don't want to go too crazy. I like Uchenna Nwosu. I think he's a very underrated ball player. A little bit of a hybrid pass rusher. I still think he's got a ton of upside. He makes impact plays, and for some reason goes unnoticed. So I like that addition. I think they pretty damn good contract as well. One more is a very long video. I feel like I'm going to lose my voice. The Rams, consider them losers, lost some key players. Von Miller, Robert Woods. I didn't like the trade. They traded him away like a non-business decision with that. Kind of let him pick a spot and took nothing different of the Rams. Unlike them, I thought. Lost some other players here and there. Another big one, Darius Williams. Lost Darius Williams, a big one there. But some other players that were somewhat minor, some other decent players here and there. They wanted Von Miller back. I'm sure they wanted Darius Williams back. So they got worse. Missed out on some things. Not a fan of the Woods trade. They need to get OBJ back. They haven't done that yet. So we're almost kind of gearing towards the big losers because you kind of want to stay the same or get better as a Super Bowl team to kind of be able to repeat. But I really like the Allen Robinson signing. I think this kind of brings something different to their offense. Something different for the better, something different for the better in defenses being able to game plan and try to. It's just I think they find a different way to get better. Let's not stay exactly the same because teams will figure us out. They'll game plan. It'll be harder to repeat. It's why teams don't really repeat much. So you go get Allen Robinson, who's that contested catch outside receiver that also underrated, could play in the slot a little bit, but contested catch outside receiver, which is what the Rams really didn't have at all. And they tried to get out of Skoranek maybe here and there, very low-key player. But they get that Robinson. That actually, I was talking about another video. I think that could actually cut down on the Stafford turnovers, which was maybe his only negative this year on an incredible Super Bowl winning season. You have that kind of, when I have to throw the ball up, it's third down or it's fourth down, and we're better off just throwing it up. You kind of have that guy, and he can just do more than contested catch as well. So I liked a little bit. That's what keeps it from being a big loser here. But really, at the end of the day, the offense might have changed in a way slightly to make it better. But overall, in what they lost, it does feel like they are a little bit worse of a team than last year. Not the end of the world when you just won the Super Bowl and you're still going to be a really good team, and the rest of the NFC doesn't look that good. So you still might be in the driver's seat as the best, very best team in the NFC. Debatable, I suppose, but so it's just not the end of the world for a team like the Rams. But that will wrap up this video. I really enjoyed this one. Really a long one. A lot went into this. Everyone could have some different opinions, so we'll see that in the comments. Looking forward to that. We're always talking on Twitter. Cannot wait for the rest of free agency and the draft to see what these teams do and how they can improve. Everybody should be improving going forward. We have you covered for everything, all of that, whether it's here or on Twitter. So like, subscribe, turn notifications on. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.